ZV-201-60011, a request from Vince Wigman, agent for Janet and James Walters, for a variance from 92.040 of the zoning regulations regarding the minimum front yard setback, 35 feet setback required, 7 feet reduction being requested to establish a new setback at 28 feet. And maximum height limit, 35 feet maximum required, 6 foot 6 inch increase being requested to establish a new height limit of 41 feet 6 inches. The property tax pin identification number 1627079 is located at 418 Chapel Point Road, Lake Lure, North Carolina, 28746. Well, those that plan to testify in this case, please stand. And if you will raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please say, I do. Let the record show that Shannon Baldwin, Community Development Director, staff, Lake Lure staff is present, as well as Miss Janet Walters and Mr. Jim Walters and Vince Wigman. First of all, is there any...
Jim or James?
Well, it's James or James.
Either one.
Are there any conflicts of interest by the board members that needs to be disclosed?
None.
None.
No.
Any ex parte communications by anyone?
No.
I met the Walters at the site, but I did not discuss the project.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Walters are neighbors and friends, and I did speak with Mr. Walters while I was visiting, but we did not discuss the case.
Okay. Anyone standing for financial gain as a result of this proceeding?
None.
None.
No.
Mr. and Miss Walters, is there anyone, and Mr. Wigman, anyone here that you would like to challenge on the as board members to hear the case? All righty. All right, then we will begin with the staff presentation. Mr. Baldwin.
Yes, sir. And as with the other memos, I have another correction to make. I'll make that as I read the memo.
Okay.
James and Janet Walters applied for certificate of zoning compliance, ZP 2016068, to add a roof over the existing decks of their house located at 418 Chapel Point Road. The proposed roof would be located in the front lake yard setback. Therefore, a variance is required prior to the issuance of this permit. The property is located in the R1 zoning district. The front lake yard setback is 35 feet from the shoreline. Closest distance from the proposed roof to the shoreline is 28 feet. 28, if you look at the application, on the face of the application, which is your next page, in the middle column, halfway down, it says required 35, and it says reduced to, and I interpreted that to be 28, and that actually is a 9. So when we ran the ad, and what I did at that point is I subtracted the 28 from 35, and that left 7 feet. So we advertised the request as 7 feet rather than the 6 that's on here. And basically I stopped at the second line and didn't go with the 6 and went with the 7. So we advertised more than what they are actually requesting. So I think based on that, we haven't done anything that would keep you from hearing this case. Had we advertised less, then that would have been an issue. But we actually advertised more, which was 7. And they probably will request that you take it back to 6. Therefore, James and Janet Walters, applicants are requesting a variance of 7 feet from the front yard setback. Architect Vince Wigman, applicant owner's agent, will also provide information to the board regarding this variance. So, based on their application, you would need to change the 28 to 29, and you would need to change the 7 to 6 feet. And I believe the applicant will basically confirm that on the face of their application, That is 29 and 6, I think, is self-evident. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Okay,
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
all right. Anyone have questions of Mr. Baldwin?
None.
No.
Mr. Butts? or-
I do not have any
No.
questions.
No questions. Okay. And, Mr. Walters or Mr. Wigman, whoever's going to, or everybody, come on up to the podium. When I look on you, I'm trying to spread another.
Yeah, most definitely.
Good. You'll state your name and property address, please.
Janet Walters, 418 Chapel Point Road.
James Walters, 418 Chapel Point Road.
And Bruce Wigman, architect, 3 Orchard Ridge Drive, Asheville.
Okay. Who's going to speak first?
I'll give you the skinny from the technical end. It is 6 feet, and that is really only a foot roof overhang past where the existing deck already protrudes into the setback. And the height, we're requesting that because the height difference is just basically the location of the measurement. We're not like stretching the roof higher of the existing building. This would be well below the height of the existing home. It's just technically, since there's a roof overhang, you measure it on a different side of a retaining wall on site, and it adds another 9 or 10 feet to that dimension from the original calculation.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Wigman?
None.
So your average, so it is an average, correct, on the height of the building? Isn't the average over the, or is it the max height?
It's an average.
Yeah, it is. You
So-
take the highest point and the lowest point, and you average that.
So-
And then you go up 35 feet, and the structure can't exceed that.
Right.
But what they're doing is your ridge for that would be below the existing roof that's already there.
And basically what we're doing is recalculating that dimension to the existing roof, which we're not messing with, but like it's the dimension at the front door, and then on the lake side, originally it was measured on one side of a retaining wall, and it already went over the 35 feet, I believe. And then we were having to calculate it on the other side of that retaining wall because we have a roof overhang.
So you did, so I'm just verifying it is the average across the
Yes,
line. Okay,
yes.
perfect, okay. All right.
Other questions for Mr. Wigman?
None.
Mr. Erickson, you have any questions for Mr. Wigman?
Mr. Wigman, the new roof, that's well below the original
Yes.
ridge.
Yes,
A good 10, 12 feet,
Yes.
right? Okay,
more than that, I think,
Right.
yes. Yes, it is.
right.
So that's what I'm saying, we're not really poking anything up above that
Right.
existing dimension, it's just that where we're calculating it from the regulations, you have to measure it in one spot before we try to do this, and then we have to measure it in another.
I see. Okay.
Mr. and Ms. Walters, would you like to add anything, either one of you? No. Anyone have any questions of the
No.
Walters they'd like to ask?
None.
Mr. Erickson, have any questions? Mr. Erickson?
No, that
Mr. Walters?
was my only question.
Okay.
It could be for either, as we kind of establish hardship with a variance, what would you say would be the hardship that is presented that would require this variance? Either way.
I think it's about like anybody else on that side of the lake, really. I mean, the hardship is that you've got a west-facing property, and the slope of the terrain is what's causing the issue. That's the hardship.
For the height, for sure.
Yes, the height.
Right.
And the other one is basically, it was already there in the setback, and you know, we're adding that 1 foot. The previous owner had put it obviously in the setback already, and we're trying to cover a portion of that deck that's already in the setback.
Nothing's actually changing about the deck.
No, we're not changing the configuration of the deck, it's just that we're adding 1 foot, so it's 6 feet because that's the existing plus 1 foot.
Right. Okay. Any further questions for any of these folks?
None for me.
And that is, and I'm sure you've done all this, but that is the average of, so is that number, that's the default, not the average of the two houses on either side?
No,
Okay.
it's basically dimensioned, like I said, there's, and again, those numbers are not by a survey, they're to the best of my ability at this point, is going from the floor level to the peak, and then down to grade on the front side of the house, which is the closest to grade the house comes, and then taking the worst elevation on the back side, which is from the deck down the highest dimension, and then from that deck to the floor level, and then again to the roof, so you're averaging the grade with the height above the floor level to the ridge.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know if they had a reduced setback anyway based on the house, I guess to the north of them.
No.
No, there's nothing, okay.
No.
Do we need to require a survey, official survey? Would it be, I guess that would be
No.
our issue anyway.
No.
No.
Okay, folks, thank you. We'll call you back if we have any more questions. Discussion? Any other questions for Mr. Baldwin that's as a result of the testimony of the applicant and Mr. Wigman?
Uh-oh, apologize.
It's okay, you get to buy everybody supper.
Gotcha. I'll do it again.
Just was thinking about hardships. I would say definitely, I can justify hardship for the height, just based on the topography of the lot. And would just welcome anybody's opinion on hardship, or curious of what other people thought on hardship for the, in terms of the setback.
In terms of the setback?
Yeah, so the setback, you're requiring the front yard setback. So technically the variance covers the height and it covers the setback, correct? So that I could very easily see a hardship based on the topography of the lot for the setback, or for the height. Just to be honest, I'm wondering about a hardship for the setback.
Well, I would agree that it is a hardship due to the setback, since it is an existing structure that was already built within the setback area. He's not increasing the footprint of it, just adding a foot for overhang, and that's justifiable. So I think that it does qualify for a hardship because of the existing conditions that are there.
Not sure that I would consider it a hardship probably, if you have the home that they have with the southern exposure that they have, the sun gets pretty warm there, and so I think that probably would, in my opinion, having some of the same issue in my own house, that would be part of the hardship as well.
Is the sun an issue at y'all's house, afternoon sun or morning?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Extreme.
It's so hot out there, you can't walk barefooted on that deck.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I would certainly entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
All right,
With regard to case number ZV-2016011, I move the board to find that the applicants have demonstrated that unnecessary hardship would result from carrying out the strict letter of subsection 92.040 of the zoning regulations, and further have demonstrated compliance with the standards for granting a variance condition in 92.088 of such regulations. Accordingly, I move the board to grant the requested variance in accordance with and only to the extent represented by the application.
we have a motion made by Mr. Ormsby. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Erickson. Any further discussion? Mr. Erickson, how do you vote?
I vote in favor of the applicant. I feel that they have demonstrated that they have a hardship due to the topography of the lot, as well as the result was not an action taken by the applicant, that the decks were built within the setback area.
Okay, Mr. Butts?
I vote yes, and just would echo what Mr. Erickson said.
Okay, Mr. Hook?
I vote yes, the proposed roof is well below the existing, and the actual size of the deck is not being increased at all. So.
Okay, Mr. Ormsby?
And I vote yes, I think they met the hardship of it, and then, the special circumstances, it's not the fault of the applicants, so I feel like they've met it.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. All the discussion we've had, we've covered all the reasons, the hardships and everything involved, the topography of the land and everything, so I vote yes as well. So your variance is approved, and thank you very much. Thanks for a good thorough drawings and everything. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, would be new business. Anyone have any new business that would like to bring up at this point?
No.
I have two.
Uh-oh.
I think we've discussed this before. I think Mr. Baldwin, and whether we do that right away or whatever, or whether anyone else even thinks this is necessary, I sure do think it'd be a great thing if we don't already have on vacation rental operating permits, not necessarily a guideline, but frequently asked questions or frequent issues. In some way to address the number of bedrooms compared to the application of the property card. That could be addressed before it gets to us here to have a situation like we've had today and lots of other days. I mean, it's a pretty, if somebody brings in an application for a permit and it doesn't agree with what, it's going to become an issue when it comes here.
And it's fairly easy to get the property card.
Well, they do that all the time. So I'm just saying, if there's a checklist or something to be sent out to the property managers, that manage a number of different ones that might be representing the applicant, or whatever we could do to prevent us having to deal with those same things over and over and over. I think that would be a great thing to be able to come up with.
We can work on that.
And you can come back to us next month and kind of give us an opinion and see what you think about that.
Okay.
The other item of new business is trash containers. I think we need, whether it needs to go back to zoning or what we need to do, as Shannon stated, the language in that pretty much ties us, restricts us, or does not clarify, is not definitive enough that, does anyone have an idea or a suggestion as something we might propose that might help that situation? Or does anybody else think it's an issue besides me?
What is the town requiring? What is,
Well, he read what the
That's
regulations
what
said.
required, was a
what do
Animal
you,
resistant.
animal resistant.
and what are you asking them to do in that regard, to make it animal resistant?
You don't ask him to do it?
Well, the zoning board comes up with this, right?
Well, council is the one that adopted the language. So what they meant when they said animal resistant, I really don't know, except that I believe that, I think the intent was to basically say, create something that keeps garbage from being pulled out of the container or the structure and strewn all over the property. And I think that was the bottom line. Whether the language does that is a different issue, I believe.
So you-
But I also think they didn't want to get into having to prescribe a specific design for a property owner and to allow for some flexibility.
Well, if we did that for vacation rental operating permits, we'd have to do it for every citizen in town, in my opinion, if we got into that, to be fair.
So I don't think you know, oftentimes it's better to ask the driver of the vehicle than it is the engineer, after the vehicle's been driven. I think, you know, if you have any suggestions about that would help you make a better decision. By better, I mean something that it reduces the grade. Any recommendations you may have, I know will be taken into consideration. You're driving the vehicle, so to speak.
Yeah, I just think we have to be careful in telling someone they have to get an animal-resistant container, because if you went to Google and Googled animal-resistant container, can you imagine how many different selections would come up? You know, so I mean, to suggest to someone that they go to Red Mountain Hardware and buy that one that I happened to see there that day, that was, how much was it, $219, I don't think the regulation says enough for us. I don't think we can tell somebody they've got to go do that.
In my opinion, almost any container you put out there is animal resistant, is my opinion.
As long as it's got a lid on it.
Yeah.
A container with a lid is, in my opinion, would be animal resistant, and I'm splitting hairs but there are some animals that could not get in there. If there is some animals that couldn't get in, then it's animal resistant. If it didn't keep out any animals, you'd have a hard time making a case that it's animal resistant. If any animal could get in it. But almost anything you put out there is going to keep some type of animal, and I use chipmunk as an example. It's going to keep a chipmunk out. Therefore, it's animal resistant. It may not do a thing to keep a bear out there, which is probably the case. I mean, you've got to have a pretty tough situation to keep a bear from getting garbage. We spoke about that a minute ago, right?
You know who, I wonder if the town manager would have any wisdom on that, given that Montreat's long dealt with a bear issue. But
Well, in the resort, they have in-ground trash containers and stuff.
There's problems with those too.
Yeah, that's
They're
what
too
I'm. That's
small, so everybody leaves it on the ground.
That's what I'm saying. You know, there are just so many different options, and so I don't know that you would.
I think the question would be, are we getting lots of complaints, or are there lots of issues with garbage?
Well, I've lived here 25 years, and I've cleaned up garbage 3 times that I know of due to an animal, whether it was a raccoon or bear. So,
Well, the town could designate me to go around to these places where the bears are getting in it and allow me a bullet, not take care of the trash problem. I mean, there's ways to get around that without more regulations. Just give me permission.
You'd have to extend the hunting season to all year.
So I just think it's something that you guys have an opinion. Do we want to ask somebody to send it back to council and let them give us a reply, or change the language, or leave the language like it is, understanding what we can require people to do and not what we don't need to require people to do?
I'd recommend leaving it as it is. I mean, it's critter resistant. To me, it's more educational that these property owners understand they have to have some kind of critter resistant structure, and educational to the runners that, hey, you just can't leave food out on the ground.
A super duper hefty trash bag's doesn't fit the bill, right?
well, but even the ones that the state puts in that are state spec and all that. I mean, if you pile it full of trash and the lid's left open,
You're going to
it's not
get
going to
in.
do much. So part of it is, at some point you can't regulate stupid, as my mother used to say.
Right.
But
Yeah, it's an example of that.
Yeah, we could get in a little more, critter resistant with a lid. I mean, I don't know how much further you can go.
Well,
I gave you the best remedy.
here, let's just, again, like my old business coming up, that's another one to think about for next. Mr. Bowen's going to think about the bedroom compared to the property card. We'll think about it's not the first time we've hashed this out, let me assure you. And we'll talk about the trash containers. Anything else in new business? So under old business, last...
do you have your liaison report?
Oh, no, I'm not done yet. I'm on. Oh, did I skip him? Oh, I apologize.
I saw him cry a little bit. I didn't want him to get embarrassed.
You gotta let him talk. You gotta let him talk, Kelly.
See, can we have the liaison report now, sir, please?
non-resistant. You're a very logical person, all of you have great common sense. A top that is somehow fastened down, whether it be a bungee cord or the natural locks that come with a trash can, animal resistant. That's all it takes. So I don't think you need to change the definition or anything. And that's all we've gone by. Some of these chipmunks have some really developed covert operational skills.
Well, they work in gangs too.
And it's hard to keep them out,
Yeah.
so. But no, simple locking. The gentleman that was here, I gave him a note. I said a simple bungee cord to hold the lid on meets that requirement. So that's all you really need.
Okay.
As far as other liaison stuff, I've got a couple of notes to talk to you about later on, and I've already talked to Shannon on a couple of things. Other than that, nothing else. I think you did a great job. You uncovered some areas I was concerned about and wondering if you're going to get to them, and you did. Great job.
Thank you. Under old business, I had mentioned the impervious surface last month with the case we had. And I think as the discussion went on about that, our liaison stated that, you know, it's maybe the second time it's ever come up or something like that. So maybe we don't need to jump on everything that comes up. We just need to remember next time we have a case like that, we go back in our memory bank and remember that we had it before. It wasn't a big part of that. So did you all have any comments or anything you've thought about it since last month?
I agree with that. It's so isolated a circumstance that we see a project like that, and we just address them as they come up.
Anyone else?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what, I guess it would be the intent of what the maximum 6,000 square feet was. You know, it seemed to me that it'd be just as easy if it was some kind of percentage.
Right. Okay. Anything else old business wise? Anything else period anyone wants to bring up? I'll just make a comment that town staff, our town manager is interviewing folks for our replacement for our zoning administrator, and that's ongoing, and some progress is being made there, I think, and not that I get a full report or whatever, but just some things I've heard. So there are candidates that have applied and people that are being talked to. So that's in the hands of our town manager. So nothing further. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hook. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We're called to order a regular meeting of the Lake Lure Lake Structure Appeals Board for October the 25th, 2016. First, we will have the roll call. I think we've lost one or two here. Let the record show that she's staying. He's going to be.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Let the record show that Mr. Quentin Calhoun, Environmental Management Officer for Lake Lure, is here, present, representing the town. Let the record also show that we have three people from the applicant that are here today. First, we have Jonathan Hinkle. We also have Mr. Kim Warner, and we have this young lady,
Harmony Lane.
Harmony Lane. That's